So, first round, as I said, we're focusing on the current state and challenges on international collaboration and energy efficiency. And why don't we start with you, Rama? Munich is deeply engaged in the EU climate mission, including project Climate City Dash 2.0. From European city-to-city collaboration, what is the reality check on how this ambitious target is?
For city exchange, I think Munich, like most other major cities, is very engaged in city-to-city exchange in many different levels. There's a plethora of programs. Every single Horizon program that we do, or European program, has a city-to-city component to it, and collaboration is kind of at the heart of many of these initiatives that we have. And there's many platforms, be it Net Zero Cities for the European mission, or some of the ones that you've built here for the UTM. The problem is really that at the end of the day, we're on the city space, we're not really equipped by default to engage in all of those kind of different initiatives, where it's not our main job to do exchange programs and platforms. Our main job is to actually implement things within the city, and there's a lot to do there. So it means that we have to be very careful about picking and choosing where we get involved in, when we get involved in, what the added value is at the end of the day. And that sometimes works quite well. We all know that, like, basically once you join the platform, there's some added value that you get out of it, but it's very hard to do that by design, and it's very hard to plan for it, basically. Very often we have this experience that we join something, we find it's great, and then in hindsight we can explain why. But ahead of the time, when you make a decision whether or not to put your resources towards an exchange initiative for another city, it's very difficult to make that decision and be careful around. And so how are we doing that? In a past life, I used to work for a major city network. And I remember one of the early stages of my career, we came up with a framework. It didn't really get a lot of attention, but it's helpful for me until this very day to kind of like quickly check whether or not we want to join an initiative and what we're looking for. Back in the day, we called it the ball bearing framework, because we looked at it as a bit of a transmission element, that you make sure that when you have an exchange with another city, you learn something and it goes frictionless as much as possible, like a ball bearing in engineering. And essentially the individual balls that we came up with, the 10th framework to decrease the friction, there were a couple of concepts, let's say, that we're looking for. One of them is mutuality. We believe that according to that framework, but also the way that we do it in practice, it needs to go both ways. An exchange needs to happen in a way that no matter how different the city is, because every city is different to some extent, you need to make sure that there is something you get out of the exchange and something that you can give towards the other side that you're exchanging with. Otherwise, it doesn't really work, at least not in the long run. Another one is dissemination. I don't mean communications in terms of like a comms platform or social media outreach, but dissemination in the sense of, if you learn something, you need to make sure that it also sticks and gets disseminated within the city. Because let's face it, most of the time when you have an exchange, there's only a few amount of colleagues that are involved in it. They might have great insights, and then they need to take it back into the reality of their cities and use it to make a difference. Now that only works if you find a way to let others know what you took out of an exchange and find a way to then implement it in practice. It doesn't help if you come back from a great experience of exchanging something and then you're the only one within the city that knows it, then it won't go anywhere. Valuation and reframing is important. So basically it's a bit of a question around how do you actually value the things that you hear, the things that you learn. A lot of it comes from active listening, trying to understand the other side first. And what they're trying to communicate before you come in with your own needs only and try to filter the conversation about what you might be trying to cherry pick out of it. So it's really about like taking the time and engaging with the others before, or another city or your counterpart. And then also reframing it, basically, how can you take something that you see as be it a good practice example, be it a challenge, be it a problem that you hear from another space, and then sort of reframe it in a way where it makes sense in your local context. That's a bit of an intellectual exercise, But if you don't do that, you end up just, talking to one another without walking away, being able to explain what you took away from it. So there's a couple of these kind of things that make an exchange more meaningful. Now, the biggest problem that we see is that it takes time and resources to design for that when you're thinking about designing platforms or exchange programs. It's not very easy. It's not as simple as putting a lot of people in the room and then shaking it and hoping that something comes out of it. You really need to think about what you want to get out of it, how you can plan for certain outcomes, how you can plan for mutuality, for reframing, these kind of things. But then at the same time, leaving it open to some extent to also have conversations and the development of the exchange go its own way, so to speak, without forcing it back on the track that you had in mind beforehand. So there's a couple of these elements in there. You mentioned Climate City Dash. It's one of the examples. It's a pilot project that we do. It's funded by Net Zero Cities, the European platform of the European mission. And there we actually opted for working with other German cities. Because one way of how you create mutuality is to make sure that you have a more homogeneous group. Now, I'm not saying it's the only way. You can also learn a lot from diversity and for maximizing diversity. But in this case, we felt that in order to create that mutuality, so we have something to learn from one another, it's important that we have a similar background, we're using similar software tools, we have similar challenges and are at the same part of the journey. And that's one of the ways how we do a city-to-city exchange within that project.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Rohit. It's really interesting to see all this, to hear all these insights on the kind of different levels of the city exchange. So next, we turn to Antje Wemhöner, Program Manager at PEEB at GIZ. Antje, from your experience implementing this GIZ 10XD initiative, what the financing and partnership models proved to be most effective? What can you shed some light on this whole partnership?
Yes, thank you. First, I'd start with the raison d'etre, the reason why PEEB was founded at COP22, I guess, in 2016, when two governments, the German and the French government, talked about climate challenges and about the fact that the building sector accounts for more than 1/3 of the global greenhouse gas emissions in construction and much more in operation. And also about the fact that climate change is a striking fact. Temperatures are rising and we are experimenting more extreme weather incidents like flooding, storms, and daily temperatures. And at the same time, the world population increases, and it's expected that until 2060, the built area will probably double, and mainly in warm and hot countries or climate zones. And furthermore, there will be an increasing urbanization rate. And to tackle all these challenges, the idea was to join forces and to do something against it. And the idea was to ask two of their governmental or public institutions. On the French side, it's the French Development Bank, Agence Française de Développement, which is managing the financial aspects of the program. And on the German side, it's the German GIZ, Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, which is rather specialized on capacity building, policy advice, advice on governments, for public policies, knowledge management, etc. So those two units started working together. Initially, the P of PEEB stood for program, and over the years, the program had some sub-programs. So now it is called, the P is for partnership for efficiency, energy efficiency in buildings. And the idea is the development of large-scale green building projects by financing through concessional loans and grants and expert support, and on the same time improving the enabling environment around it. That means improving strategies and regulations for resilient and efficient buildings through policy advice, capacity building and knowledge. And knowing that buildings do not stand alone, they always are in an urban context, or at least in any context of environment. We have to focus more on urban aspects as well, because there is the interrelation we have to consider it. And in the following, I will talk more about the capacity building or the enabling facility, because that's the GIZ part, the so-called soft part, and that's also the part where the strategies for urban development or advice for good strategies can be elaborated and implemented together with partners. And currently we are working with our program. Our sub-program is working together with the European partner countries on 4 continents. We have achieved to get a large-scale co-financing by the Green Climate Fund, and the GIZ part is supporting our partner countries to bring the investments and scale. That means providing good conditions that make them using the funds in an efficient way, replicating, learning from previous experiences, and also learning from other countries that are participating in the same program. And that's a really, on the one hand, challenging, and on the other hand, very enriching part of that program.
Great, and maybe we should thank now Osterhoff, coordinator for Smart Cities Model Project at DLR-PT. Frank, the Smart Cities Digitalization Program is working to transform how cities operate. What are you seeing as the key barriers to implementing digital solutions for energy efficiency specifically?
Yeah. So Smart City Program we use. It's on behalf of the German Federal Ministry of Construction and City Development. It lasts about 10 years. Not every city, not of the whole time, but at least 10 years. And started with the core. The city can apply for funding. And there are about 73 projects, and they're compromising about 90 cities. Big cities, small cities, every kind of city. And they want to do about 650 projects, and only half of these projects are implemented by now. Yeah, so they are working on that. So they started with writing a data strategy, the digitalization strategy, and we requested them that the strategy must be adopted by the city council. So if you want to put it into practice, you need the political will behind you. So that's the first thing. And the other thing is everything that's implemented must be shared with the other cities. So we found city development groups, networks. So if they are finished, so they should publish it within these groups, and it's not confidential, so it's open to the public. And the third one is everything must be open source codes. They can buy something, but they don't get funding. So I looked through the strategies, and what they do on energy management. There are three things. Most cities are developing dashboards, so they collect the data and they want to get it visualized at one point. So you can put data from heating, for cooling, for energy producing, for different energy sources, just collect the data at one point. And the other thing is they build digital twins. So if you want to change something, you can show it how it will run. So planning and administration really like digital twins. So it's I think it's a weird thing. And the third one is they developing concepts like virtual power plants. So the most people, governments are used to have one big power plant, but then renewables are at a smaller scale. You ask for barriers. So the most important barriers are the financial resources. If you want to develop something like that, you need time. So most of city governments need time to operate it on the long run. It's not only to purchase something; it's to operate it on the long run. That's a crucial point. And the other thing is the human resources. You need skilled staff to run it. Not only to develop it, but to run it on the long run.
That's great. Thanks a lot. And we'll come back to you. From the more questions, because these short term, virtual power plants are really interesting concepts, or things that are for being implemented in cities or tested in enough range. Finally, for this round, Rohit, as the head of sustainable energy at ICLEI, local governments for sustainability, with a global network of 2,500 cities or more, what common patterns you see in urban energy transition challenges? Are there any universal challenges, or do you think there is kind of specific or kind of specific context specific anything in cities worldwide?
Yeah, thank you very much, Todd. Thank you for having me here and inviting me for this session to UTMC, UTM. Best mission under mission innovation, and I tell you, Georgia didn't pay me for that, but by far the best performing one there. And thank you very much for the light lunch, very energy efficient, as this topic also says. But having light and performing more. But back to the question, working with ICLEI, multiple cities, local and regional governments across the world, what I have noticed on the energy specific issue for sustainable energy transition, because of course cities need to deal with many other things like waste and water and whatnot. But on the energy, the context may vary, and it does vary. But the structural barriers, perhaps across cities in the world, remain the same. There are many, and some of them my colleagues already here have touched upon. One of them is, if I pick up capacity gaps. So if you work with local and regional governments everywhere, you will also understand that not every staff or person from the city, municipality, or so on is very much dedicated as perhaps you or I from ICLEI is. And then again, there are some skills that lack. Second, I think very common is fragmental governance. There is not so much interaction between the departments in the city itself, apart from there being difference between the national plans and local plans, and efforts trying to integrate this. I mean, we have been trying to advocate for multi-level governance, multi-level action for so long, I don't know, more than a decade at various COPs and so on, but yet when you see the final outcomes, we don't see cities being featured so strongly in various negotiations and so on. Third, and very common, I think everybody's asking for it, is access to finance, and especially for cities and regions from the global south. Perhaps one of the biggest barriers for local governments to convert plans into actionable projects, measures, and so on. One of the fourth things that he also picked up was data. The availability of data is a crazy thing. I have worked myself on the field. Something that I planned to do in, let's say, 2 months to 6 months, it takes me 2 years to collect credible data based on which I could plan. And it is not something that happened in Kenya. It happened in Argentina, Indonesia, everywhere. It's so common, yeah. And in fact, even in Germany, you will not find a centralized portal to collect all data. You will knock the doors of GIZ, you will knock the doors of Fraunhofer, and so on. No? So one thing to notice is that pathways and the frameworks, some of them Roman also mentioned, might not fit everybody the same way. So we have to understand this. And that's why I say contextualize the measures and the solutions that we're talking about. I mean, if I work in Africa, people or the cities might be more interested in energy access. If I go to Southeast Asia, they might be looking at more heat challenges, looking at urban cooling and whatnot. So I cannot say that my Rohit framework on energy will fit these guys as well or them. So I need to figure out a way. Second, solutions need to be contextualized, as I say, but perhaps the enabling conditions with data, governance, finance, this is same across. So we need to create those enabling conditions to overcome the barriers I just mentioned. Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Wim, for the broad overview and shares global challenges. Now, we, again, with a great thanks to all of our speakers. We cannot finish the first round, but we're not there yet. So, yeah, I mean, now it's your turn. If you have any questions or comments on the challenges, current state, I would open the floor and for the audience. If anybody has any questions? If not, then we move to the second round. But yeah,
maybe just your point that is because we're talking about any since I would probably be Munich as a city like that, you know, when the city doesn't providing the steer was wondering if you have any challenges you're working was particularly in common with on the energy efficiency at the moment, in the like part of the kind of missions. A lot. Yeah, I imagine if there's anything that is hot on your agenda at the moment in terms of infrastructure as well.
So I can maybe talk a little bit about what we do in the building space, because I think it's an interesting example that goes to almost all the cities essentially. I think for Munich, we have about 40% of GHG emissions that come out of the building sector, essentially, like your entire building energy system, everything from a heating system to the building envelope and these kind of things. And that's really also one of the biggest levers that we have, aside from economy and transport, is about 20%. It's incredibly difficult to get into renovations because it's one of those wicked problems. Most of you know the stories. You have disaggregated ownership. We have a lot of private owners that need to invest. They don't have the incentives always to invest because they might not be able to recoup their investment because they're not paying for the energy bills. All of these kind of problems. One of the ways of how we've been tackling it at the city of Munich is by creating a funding program that adds to the already existing national funding programs for building renovations in Germany. So in Germany, you get a certain chunk of a renovation. You can get, I think, about 30% funded by the national government, and we top that up to the point where it tips the scale, basically, for private building owners, but also for public buildings, to then have a more accurate business model for actually going ahead and doing the investment. It's been quite a big success. We had a leverage factor from 1 to 11. So €1 that we spend in public money triggers about €11 of investment on the market. The pot has always been empty, so you always have more requests than you can actually fund potentially, which is a good sign for the effectiveness of the program. It also is a very strong sign that we actually need more money, like everyone else, even Munich. And the most interesting thing that we found is after exercising it for a while, that there's a couple of adjustments that we had to make to really focus on the things that make the most sense. First of all, we took out the new buildings. So anything that has been built in the last 5 or 10 years, basically, you have much less impact renovating buildings like that because they're already built to higher standards than if you look at your worst performing building stock at the end of the day. So that's one of the things. Also, from a social perspective, it happens to be that often in your worst performing building stocks, you also have those families, those people living that suffering from energy poverty, and that would be the least vulnerable to increasing rent prices if you do the renovations and you put it on them. So what have we done is basically we've looked at, is there a way to not look at just the pure rent price, but the rent plus the utility bills that those houses are building, which is really what we can leverage to cut cost, and at least get to a point where we can renovate buildings in a cost-neutral way for the people that are living within them. And then, we have a nice study that shows from the data perspective, there's a lot that can be done basically. If you focus on the worst performing buildings and adjust the funding mechanism just in the right way, you're able to actually make sure that the people living in it, they don't have a higher cost because of the renovation. It still makes sense for the landlord to actually come and apply for the funding that we're able to give out, and then to increase also the building value. So it's a win-win solution over there. And for us, it means we really put the money, the limited tax-based money that we have, at the point where it matters the most. But this is kind of like the newest development. Some of this is not really out yet, so don't put me too much on that. But it goes to show that like you're learning a lot within the city if you monitor the programs that you do and adjust them accordingly. It requires a lot of research and effort as well, and to kind of really keep the finger on the pulse on how you are spending money, how you're implementing these kind of things. And then you have a case also for what Rohit was saying, to really make sure that while you have a lot of shared challenges across the world, to then also look at the differences in each city and to see what you can particularly learn from one place to another. It's the mutuality that I was talking about before. But it takes a long time of us actually learning ourselves how to do things properly to then be able to have a meaningful conversation with others around.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's exactly the cases where not just between Global South and Global North, but also within Europe, a lot of cities would benefit from cases like that. Because again, one thing that is kind of killing resources is that cities testing the same idea over and over and just like wasting money on something that has already been proven either to work or not to work in both directions. All right, anybody else? Any questions? Or shall we move on to the next round? I guess we should move to the next round on solutions and innovations. This round is about what's working and how we can scale it, basically. So, Antje, I'm going to take the honor of starting with you on what innovative approaches are emerging from the French-German partnership and the PEEB program. Can you elaborate on the innovation with like the international partnership framework and so on and so forth? So, yeah, maybe. Well.
Yes, to my opinion, there are several innovative approaches within that partnership, and the first thing is the cooperation between France and Germany, and joining forces and sharing knowledge, and we are working together in a complementary way. And I think that's also the core of the success of this approach, that we tend not to double structures or to double activities, but we are looking on what are the strengths of each organization which access to resources, knowledge, finances, etc. do we have, and how can we combine it in the best way so that we can cover all the needs. That's the first factor, and the second one is, you mentioned it already, and we are facing the same. We are currently working closely together with 11 countries that are rather different and partly rather far away from each other, but they are similar. They have similar challenges, and through our platforms and our program structure, we give them the opportunity to exchange, to learn from each other, and also to learn from the success parts of the others. And we try to improve every approach. There is a little bit of try and error, but the next one who is using the same approach can also benefit from some learning curves that we had. And we think avoiding to invent the wheel from scratch is also a good thing. And then the third point is that together as a large program implemented by two organizations, it's easier for us to approach donors. For example, the Green Climate Fund, and currently we are also grabbing with the EU, which turns out to be more difficult. But the fact that we are showing up as two organizations from two countries seems to be convincing, and also for partner countries. If we can allow us the message to the ministries in partner countries who are not always ready to work together, and look, if we from two different countries manage to work together, we suppose that you also can try to do it.
Great, thanks a lot, Tim. Now, to Europe, from the global network perspective, what kind of success stories are you seeing, and what demonstrate that cities are doing it right or maybe wrong in some cases? But I think we just had a very good example from New York that says, maybe you can share some.
Yeah, I mean, there are many success stories. Question would be whether one can scale it up and replicate it. I think that's quite an important thing to check. I mean, not just that, but also from the funders side, how quickly they shift from one year to the other. I don't know whether it is sustainable energy this year and just energy transition the next year. Well, what do you do with the building blocks that you've already laid on the filters? But yeah, I mean, there are many cases, and in our network we do see that institutional commitment and political commitment is very, very important, without which nothing much moves, in the departments and so on. And Rohit is here who can say more. But we have seen cities like Bogota and Bonn, where we are today, also in Malmo. These are global north, also in the global south. In cities of Indonesia like Jakarta, and in Argentina like smaller cities like Avellaneda and so on, they have shown the commitment, shown the passion, and worked towards transitioning themselves from their current status towards a more cleaner, renewables based. And in this, a lot of planning and knowledge sharing and all these things, technologies, whatnot, needs to happen. Because you can plan, but to execute, you need to figure out what are the, how do you convert the strategic planning into, more mechanisms to implement. And in there is very much need of peer learning and figuring out what kind of replication can happen through initiatives, platforms that we have had ICLEI, at GCOM. UTM is one of those, and then there are initiatives that we all look at with various partners. ICLEI has 100% renewables, IEA is working on energy efficiency, where we are also collaborating, and that is very important. And that's the third point I would suggest, is to look at how certain partnerships could be leveraged, and building what partnerships and in which form and shape is also very important, because at the moment, the world, we see how it is changing with the geopolitics going around, and then also the funding development, where grant-making organizations changing their aims and goals and reducing the funding. So these partnerships that we make with X and Y needs to be very, very well thought around, needs to make and create value of the brand, not just for us, but also for the cities. And the cities at the moment, the local and regional governments do work very well in a multilateral or multi-stakeholder partnership with let's say, in the private sectors, the CSOs, the NGOs, universities, academia, and whatnot. Some of the examples I can give you, I think Georgia was talking about some of them in the morning, where they're working in Kenya, also in Argentina, where they have shown commitment, and it's moved on. So next round of partnership from ICLEI to UTM has gone, and they are trying to move the communities more, working on the ground level, helping the local and regional governments to achieve what they planned for. In fact, working in Indonesia, I've even seen where the national government may lack a lot of commitment and push towards, let's say, renewables and energy efficiency. The local governments have pulled their socks up, being brave. I think colleagues before also said that it's time to be bold and act. They went ahead against the national government and committed to not just moving to a cleaner, greener energy base, but also towards net zero plans. Of course, those are contributing towards the national planning as well. And that's where my first point was, somewhere you need to bring in the local planning and integrate it in the national plan, because at the moment, I don't see that happening. And there are many other cases. SFA in Brazil, as there was done a lot of energy planning analysis. In India, we have Ahmedabad, Coimbatore, Nagpur. We have done a lot of work on climate integrated energy plans. In Africa, you have through colleagues from COMSA. They have done brilliant, great work on climate change and energy access. So I can go on. But I think my conclusion would be the difference that it makes at the end of the day is the local and regional governments and cities who only work on just plans, and the ones who go ahead and execute those plans into actionable projects or impacts that we have at the end of the day.
Right. Thanks a lot, Larry. Again, it was ability to identify and share those global stories is kind of incredibly valuable to the networks, because again, with the reach to on the ground, reach on many areas and regions, that's highly important. Now, coming back to you, Frank, on the smart city digitalization progress. Do you think cities are successfully implementing this at scale, or do you think there is still lagging on that direction?
Both. So, they started a few years ago to developing their strategies. So then after that, they started with the basic projects. That means how to make a dashboard, how to make a data platform. So at the moment, what they are scaling are dashboards and their data platforms. And before I talked about the innovation and development networks. So now it's those networks are very valuable for the cities, because the networks are closed shops. So nobody will call you stupid if you don't know something. Have a clear benefit because You can't do it of your own. You have to convince other people. And the third one is, most of all, you have to finance it. You have to have the skills. A lot of projects, model projects, are stopped the day after the last funding money. So that's a trick.
Again, I'll come back to you, Rama, but I'm going to kind of break the rules a bit. I'm kind of very curious to know your experience with cities when you presented, let's say, the digital solution, the digital twin, and all that, and their reaction about like how much resources, how much time, how much everything saves this kind of approach. Like, did they, I mean, is there a case where they're like, oh my God, this is something that we would really love to do? Because again, instead of having people on the streets, you have the sensors and then they do the job. So is this something that you've gonna have this experience in cities what you've never done before? Because I'm not talking probably some cities.
It depends on the city and on the people who do it in practice. So if you talk to people to the citizens, and you can show them what to develop a city app, and you can use the app to get a ticket from something, or the app where you can find a parking lot. So that's clear value, and then you get the support. If you go on the street and I tell the people, oh, you want to make it a data mining platform, what should I do with that information? So that's the point in the. And some administrations or whatever people say, I don't want it, I want to change anything, I'm afraid of it. That's quite normal. You have both.
Mm-hmm. Both ways. Right. And that's also all in terms of data feeding to the system.
Yeah.
I mean, with all these cell phones around.
Yeah.
Circling around the city, you can always trace the movement, trace everything.
A lot of people, a lot of cities starting with implementation of sensors. So if you want to have a dashboard, a data mining platform, you need sensors for the management of traffic, then the management of moisture in trees, whatever you want. So you need the technical equipment to get the data.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Robert, as I said, I am not forgetting you. I'm back to you. You mentioned all the frameworks. I don't know if you want to touch upon that a little bit more, but also maybe you can also touch on the specifics, the measures that Munich is implementing, like your advanced digital twin for heating and cooling you mentioned, and maybe that could serve as a concrete examples for our cities. I think you've given us very good example on energy efficiency, and why not be innovative on some other things as well.
Yeah, let's skip the framework.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to stop beating the horse instead. I think I've said enough about that. But yeah, I can definitely talk about the digital twin and maybe pick up somewhere where you left off to some extent. So Munich is one of the cities that has more advanced digital twin solutions, even within Germany or the European context, I would say. For us, the digital twin is something that we do as much as we can in-house. The city is large enough for that. It's run by the geodata department, or the geodata unit within the communal services department. They are the ones that already have most of the data that you need for a variety of digital twin applications. And for us, I should say the digital twin is the concept. Okay, so when we say digital twin, it's not the one platform with a one 3D model or what you name it. It's basically the concept of how, based on the data that we have available at the city that we own, we can build individual applications. We have about 17 of those. They range from things where you can have a 3D model about a certain street and look at it as it is today, and then how it would look like with a bike lane on it and trees, so you can visualize and experience the kind of like planning activities that we like to do, which is very important. That really changes the game on governance to some extent, because you can see it and feel it, discuss it in a different way. Also, the heating plan, basically heating and cooling plan, is something that we're quite proud of, because in Germany every city is legally obliged since the last legislation period to come up with a heat map basically for the entire city, and we're the first big German city that did it and also digitalized at the same time. So it's a geodata portal. Everyone can go on it. It's freely available on the web, and you can see basically exactly where your building, your area is, and what's going to happen with it, what kind of zone it is, if the heating network will be expanded there, at what time, and so on. And that's also super helpful for us to look at city planning in a very different way, and have conversations with the stakeholders to see how we can connect them to the grid. So there's a lot of that, but I think the takeaway from what I've seen and what I like about the way that the colleagues in Munich are doing their work is you need to find what's right for in the city, in the sense that you mentioned that smaller cities, there's no sense in a small city to collect the amount of data that we're collecting in Munich and then have that, because that would blow that department out of proportion from their perspective. So maybe the solution is to think really hard about what it is that you actually need, and then do a procurement exercise of something that's available on the market and helps you along. What I'm going to say though is that I think there's a lot of value, as much as the city can, to do things by themselves within the administration or with the stakeholders locally, rather than to outsource things or to rely too much on, let's say, partnerships. That's something that I believe in a way. If you can create a data set and own it publicly, you should do that. If it makes sense for you to build up a department with certain capabilities, you should do that. It's always better to do that than to depend on, let's say, a solution that you procure, or a data set that you procure, or a consulting exercise that you procure to get maybe a snapshot of a certain data set once that you don't have to tender out again. Because in the long run, these things build up. There's a let's say a return on investment. If you keep doing things by yourself, usually you end up creating more value for the taxpayers and for those people that you're in service for. No private sector solution provider can do the exact same thing for you. They can provide smaller fixes, and for some cities that is exactly what they need. But if there's a chance to do things yourself, you should build those capabilities very much. And I don't know if anyone here is from the UK, but I think the UK is an example for how outsourcing can really kill a lot of the capabilities within cities. Not every city. There's great cities in the UK that do a lot of fantastic stuff, don't get me wrong, but they have a long history in terms of outsourcing very vital functions of the public sector. Ever since Maggie Thatcher, you have cities that don't have their own HR anymore, they don't do their own data and digital activities anymore, and lots of other things, and that really kills not only local government, but it also kills the public service that you provide with these kind of things and creates dependencies. So I think that's what I can share. Not everybody has to be like Munich, I say, but it's very important to really think twice in the long run, like what you need in terms of continuity. Maybe one last point, if you allow me that.
Sure.
Speaking about continuity, there's a discrepancy between politics in the local government and the administration and what the general public needs. Politics, why? Because politics needs constant change, especially in democratic systems. You have election cycles, and if you want to profile yourself on a political level, and if you have back and forth between, for example, conservative and left-leaning or something like that, every election cycle needs to throw certain babies out with the bathwater and do things differently just because, in a way. That's the name of the game. People also want that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have any interest in newspaper articles and so on. However, when it comes to things like digitalization and building up these data capabilities in the long run, like this constant changes, it can be poisonous to some extent. So I like to compare basically to if you're on the ocean, you have those waves, they go back and forth, they go up and down, but you also have the undercurrent, and the undercurrent needs to be stable to some extent. This is the kind of dichotomy that we're working with. I'm speaking the metaphors here, but I think you're seeing what I'm trying to get at. there's a certain trick to being a good public servant, which is how do you create that continuity despite the fact that you have political change and that you need to serve it as well, because this is the democratically elected people in the council. Basically, if they want things to be different, you have to follow that. But at the same time, it's very important to make sure that things build over time. You don't build a smart city, you don't build a digital twin, and you don't renovate an entire building stock within an election cycle. So you really have to think about how to create things that are stable, that are out there, that work as a platform, that speak for themselves in terms of the benefit that people have, if you want to have that long-term effect on the city and not, fall, left or right, depending on where the politics stand at the moment.
Great. Thanks a lot, Rama. Now, I think it was really insightful conversation with all the speakers, but now we just want to have any opportunity for the audience, if they want to share something or have any questions or solutions before we move on to the future backwards. Ellie, please.
We heard in the morning about political cooperation is an inclusion, and I got to know the founders of Donut Munich, a foundation that is working the donut economics. You're laughing. Are you open to a collaboration or to experimenting with the founders of Munich University?
Yes, another set of colleagues working on circular economy. They work with the donut. They work with a few other people. I think in general, what you're getting at is how do we work with other stakeholders within the city? I mean, this could be a whole session all by itself. I think it could talk about that in terms of the mission, for example. So within the European mission, which is the staff unit that I'm leading, that's one of the key elements that we basically think about. How can we engage those parts of the city that we rely on to become climate neutral at the end of the day? Because we have about 30% of the things that are in our scenario model for getting to net zero are things that we as a city can control. And now I'm speaking for the whole city. And if I don't know exactly the percentage, but if you look at what the administration can do by itself, that percentage becomes very small. Okay, so that it's very clear, for example, 40% of the emissions that we have are with the private sector in Munich. We even lack visibility on what that exactly means, to be honest, like in terms of like opening it up and saying like, is it production processes? What kind of production processes? We know it's not, we don't have the one big steel work that we need to decarbonize and then we're done. Lots of small companies potentially and so on. And working with those kind of stakeholders and also with civil society that sometimes is faster, better, more progressive, more ambitious than we are at the administration for various different reasons, is a key element. Now the question is, how do you work with these stakeholders? Because everybody wants and thinks something different and needs something different to move forward. So you can have like what doesn't work is basically get everyone in a room and then have a nice big co-creation workshop and these kind of things, and then outcomes impact. It doesn't work that way. It's a lot of legwork. It's a lot of like working with individual stakeholders, understanding what their real value proposal is, and that takes time to do it right. And then seeing what they actually need. Sometimes it's financing, sometimes it's an introduction, sometimes it's visibility, sometimes it's a mix of all of those kind of things or something completely different. And this is why it's a lot of one-on-one. And I think the big trick around co-creation is not to fall into this trap of thinking that stakeholders are just one homogeneous group in some sense, or like you can treat them all the same, or it's about providing platforms. It's really a lot of it is compartmentalizing, seeing where you can make a difference with what kind of stakeholders and what state they need to be in order for you to actually provide value to them, and hoping that they can also do the same thing for others. And that's a very different exercise from what we see. Also, when you look at the mission, the methodologies that come out of it, a lot of them are kind of like one size fits all. It's like, oh, you're the city, we just need to tell you how to use our frameworks properly. And then once you go ahead and do that with all of the 4 stakeholder groups, then everything's going to come in place. It's not British. It's like us finding the right moment with the little bit of resources that we have to do an impact that we can actually improve and mention.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot again, Roman. Anybody? Oh, yeah.
We'll comment on that, because I think you are scoring the very important point here, is the idea that it's not really clear to cities what they need, and they are not able to express it to the rest of the world. It's something that we encounter regularly. And I think it's really a mismatch in reality. Obviously, I don't think anyone has a solution that will fix everything for everyone. You're right. It needs to be, kind of curated, and there is no one size fits all. There's no silver bullet. And I think that this is actually one of the things that is probably stretching the transition much more that we probably potentially will need. You have solutions, you have people who think that their solutions are going to be fixing everything, but this ability to be agile and to understand that what works for you maybe does not work for someone else, and it's not because that person has not thought about it, it's simply maybe that just the context is different. I think it's something that it's really bringing a lot of additional challenges when it comes to identifying solutions for cities. And I hope that the Urban Transition Mission Center was actually able to support that unlocking, because we presented, for example, the city governor contract, right? We presented that as an example of a methodology, but as cities build a mission, we are working with Indian cities and they have their own mission. We are working with Japanese cities and they have their own mission. And all of these missions have their own set of rules and ideas and way that they are implementing what they are doing. And I think that ability of learning from each other, rather than thinking there is one Bible and we all follow it, is probably a very important element if we want to secure the transitions across the board. So I think, just to say, your point is absolutely taken, and I think it's something that collectively we should be more mindful of.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Joel. Andrada, we kind of ran out of the allocated time, but with your permission, we can continue on a little bit.
Yeah, please. No pressure. No pressure.
All right, perfect.
I have a question, if I'm allowed to.
Please.
I mean, Rama is a great friend, but I don't agree with what he said. I'm sorry.
Please don't.
I think the few things that you said before, I don't know, is the Roman, the experts talking, or is it the Munich guy talking? So that's both. Because you see, I mean, what Munich is doing, perhaps it's because of resources and finance, it's just not possible for each and every local government to do it like that. I wanted to go back earlier on the data part that you said. I don't know how is it possible for each local government to do the data collection, management, and also reviewing it by themselves. Munich can perhaps. I cannot imagine Nairobi city or Kisumu city doing this. They don't just have the expertise. They don't know what to do. If we go to any other global south city, probably the same. So, I mean, I agree, it would be great, because otherwise I'm going to different guys to collect pockets of data, but how do we reach there? I mean, that's I ask myself, because I am working on the field, so I don't know what solution works, but if Munich can do it, great, would be perfect to know if this practice and process, whatever it is that could be exchanged by Munich into other global south or perhaps also global north cities and regions. The second thing you mentioned, do it yourself and no one knows to outsource it. I think if you go to major global south cities, most of these city and provincial level work contracts on just energy, water, waste, whatnot, is all taken by the big four. Your team with the UI. Those guys are PwC, they are working on all those things, and the governments are happy to give them those contracts. So there must be something amiss. I mean, either they should not, or I don't know. And this is my question to you. And also the other element to it is, you go to a city council or municipality, they'll never say, we are just waiting for this work to come. So the first thing you hear is capacity issues, shortage of staff, even for basic municipal services. Yeah. Then how do you, of course, how do you imagine that with this energy transition, very new things are coming in, capacities are being built, data you mentioned, planning, strategies, how do we expect them to change overnight and do this? So that's my question to you. I would want to know. I would love to take it forward and share it with many other cities, also with UTM perhaps. Yeah.
But I do think that not everyone needs to do everything. But there is something to be said of having at least
Reach hell of having to buy more consultancy capacity and more expensive over time. And that's something that leads the potential global south trying. Not everybody has the budgets the Saudis have, obviously, so you also have different structures there. But if you buy the same consultancy service more than 3 times in the city, you should ask yourself, why do you do it wrong? And when your staff is leaving, then maybe this is something to work on. Maybe you need to think about, and I know it's very easily said, very difficultly done, of course, but especially also for development corporations, I think the idea to leave something behind, and if you have to come back, then to leave more behind that builds on what you've left behind before, continuity, I think this is super, super important. And the problem that the West has, or the global North has in lots of different ways, is that we think too much project cycles. It doesn't, maybe not so much on the public service side of things, but definitely when it comes to North-South collaboration, we always work on projects, right? So if you're lucky, you are in a program that has multiple projects that build on one another, maybe over a 10-year period, but I haven't seen anything longer than that, ever, And a project, by definition, has a start date and an end date, and the continuity is not there. So we're kind of like doing the same thing as the Saudis have been doing on spending their own money. If we keep those kind of challenges, it takes time to build capacity. It takes time for having synergies between this project, this activity, and then bringing them overall together. And I know it's difficult, but I feel like it's very dear to my heart, this issue, because this is something we have in common with, whether it's the global south or the global north, or whether it's, the stuff, the work that we do. Also, I work in projects, pretty much at the city. We shouldn't be doing projects, we should think about conservatives. You should think about services, that can build on one another and that are stable, and where also the population that gets used to these kind of services and likes them can rely on the fact that they will still be there tomorrow, if that makes sense. So we have a lot of these kind of challenges. For us, maybe it's politics, maybe it's this or that, maybe it's consultancy, it doesn't matter, but continuity is so often lacking in our space.
Great, thanks. And
Great, now we got some good knowledge.
Well, my point is we actually started implementing the Fishbowl because I felt like we were not interacting enough. So it was great to have this kind of further interaction. And Ellie, at some point you raised your hand. Are you satisfied with the answer?
It was covered, because one principle of world economics is go where the energy is. So take whatever there is in your city or in your context, the people that are enthusiastic, that are already engaged, and embrace them and try to work with them and not set out things and fade up. So go there for it is your foundation in the Munich and then work with them because they are enthusiastic people and one of the pattern gets to another at the point to accident or the whole battery line.
Thanks, Ellie. Yeah, well, we've kind of discussed the challenges and solutions, and we now, for the final round, and we will probably aim at 2 to 3 minutes per speaker, so we don't want to take too much of our time because everybody probably wants to leave, but I would hate to miss this conversation. So, well, let's see how we truly accelerate the urban energy transitions and what are the key transformations on kind of defining the success in coming years. So I want to start with you, Frank. What emerging digitalization approaches could be critical transformation that could help on that sense? Yeah.
And I think it's three things. That's one thing is data security. If you collect data and data platforms, whatever, data security is becomes more and more important. It's very important. And so, I use word. About 2 years ago, some German cities were blackmailed by criminals, and they can offer some public services for several months. So the data security is highly. The other point is technology sovereignty. So we should not depend on Chinese companies or Chinese federal policy if we get the technical equipment we need. So if you want to rely on the digital services or energy services, where we need the technical equipment, technical sovereignty, and that leads to production capacities. So that's a European perspective. We need the capacities to produce those things. So the difference between North America and Europe is Apple can develop an iPhone, but no American company can produce one. So I think we need to need the knowledge and the capacities to produce the energy system we need.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Antje, from the French-German partnership perspective, what are these kind of pivotal transformations that you kind of encounter or you see developing in this range?
There are some aspects that turn out to be crucial for all of us, because I noted down the most important aspect would be consistency in decisions and to consider central and very basic topics like climate and urban development, for example, continuously in the center of attention. And I do not want to elaborate again on that, but we see that lack of continuity in political decisions in donor countries and even more in our partner countries, where establishing a good contact with our partner ministries or partner organizations it can take a long time after new elections, and that's really hindering and sometimes a backlog of results and success. So commitment in international cooperation should depend much less on political and on the results of elections. That would allow to get more impact. And the other really important aspect is to leave the idea of my project or my country is doing all that, and to consider oneself as an organization, as a government, as an idea, is one element within a whole agglomeration of good ideas of functional institutions, where everyone or every idea contributes what it can or what the idea can provide, what the institution can provide, and that would allow us to avoid doubling and to continue spending money and using capacities and resources in an effective way and hopefully lasting.
Thanks, Antje. Going to break the city order. I'm going to jump to city and then come back to the global. So, Roman, what's your perspective from the city side? What should happen next until this home?
Can you specify the question a little bit? Give the mayor.
On the energy efficiency and then transformations, is there any particular point that you would highlight in your teacher, not just in, but also in the cities in general, if you may generalize?
I guess I could make it very short. It was just funding. No, but seriously, I think the funding and financing debate is like the biggest at the moment. And maybe not to just repeat things and recycle things that we hear all the time. I think one of the big challenges that we see is when we talk about things like private investment, crowding in private finance, because the city budgets are not enough to do this big transformation. to some extent it's true, but what tends to be forgotten in this debate, in my view, is that there is the replacement for a good business model is the taxpayer has to pay for it. So it goes back to the common budget. Green bonds, wonderful example of how you have another instrument that is a loan-based instrument, and all loan-based instruments ultimately mean somebody is going to make money from it, and that means technically you can get the finances maybe potentially earlier in the game to implement things faster, which can be good and it can be the right thing to do. But ultimately, the interest on that is usually stuck with the taxpayers very often. Same thing with cherry picking projects at the end of the day. Every seasoned or every investor will basically tell me, well, I need a return on investment on your project, otherwise there's no business for me and that. So all of the projects that don't have a proper return on investment tend to be projects that you need the public budget for. So if you're not careful with the budgeting and financing debate, you end up in a situation where you basically say private investment is fantastic as long as they can cherry pick the kind of projects they would like to finance, and then the rest will do it the same way as we've always done it, which is working with the public budget as the end of the day. That thing should be at least kept in mind. Maybe it can be changed. One last thought, do we have the money technically for funding a lot more things through public budgets? In theory, we have it. If you collect all the taxes that we're supposed to collect. I mean, Germany is famous for having, 100 million a year that we're not collecting in taxes because they're too big, and there's all these scandals and things like this. Cum-ex, all these kind of things you can read up on the news. It's 100 billion euros that we're not collecting every single year. Think about how much we could do with that in cities. We need fractions of that to become climate neutral, that way. And it's not that you need to change the law. The law is there. We just need to get ahead and collect it. It's politics, and it's elite theory. I'm not a communist at all, but just say that. But we should just collect our damn tax euros, essentially, do something with it. And I'm sure we could finance a lot of the stuff in the global south and talk about that as well.
And we could make a very good use of that money.
Yeah, sure. So while we talk about financing, I think we should keep those kind of things in mind. That's a bit more story in.
Now, really, as I said, on the global coordination perspective, what is the essential transformation for the global efforts like this?
It's very complicated at the moment and difficult to say, but one thing, and I can answer a few things, that needs to happen is definitely like a systemic localization of global and national programs. Why I say this is because Rama mentioned about funding and finance. Most of the funding and financing is happening at the bilateral level as a top-down approach through national governments. And in which the implementation, of course, is happening at the local level, but not very well considered of what the local and regional governments want. Their planning or their needs is not always integrated. That is there. But the other issue is now chain, and we have to see it. We at ICLEI and also with our partners, we are trying to see how this way, mode, form, shape of funding and financing is being localized or action at the city level and so on. But as I said, currently the landscape for the funders, donors, whatever, is changing drastically. We are moving to a multipolar world where we don't know how to predict and what he or she would want. In this case, whoever the head of state is. We have seen that donor countries, funding agencies are shifting based on the national government, especially the West, if I may say the G7, changing towards their interest in it. I mean, Donald Trump has been very for it. It's not social, work. I fund you because you need to work in America's interest, and so I've recently seen Italian governments funding. And a lot of European governments are shrinking their funds as well as selecting the region of funding based on where they have their interests. Well, you'll see that, for example, in Europe, going to more African cities and countries. So that is there. How do we deal with it? We really don't know. We have to lobby, advocate. Somebody said, be bold and act. We need local leadership. Somewhere or somehow we need to break that thing. Otherwise, of course, we go as business as usual of today's time and events. So this was more at the politics, Rohan mentioned, and their side. At our side, global platforms, or networks, we need to see how we can shift or transition from just merely reporting and, talking, the same thing as he said, repackaging in new words, to maybe become collaborative spaces for more actionable material projects, whatever it is, impact at the local level, in this case for cities and regions. So that's where we are, and that's what I would conclude. At the moment, I don't think there is any guru who can pinpoint with a finger, this is the solution. So very, very dangerous space and time. Sorry, but
Mate, thanks a lot, Rohit. And I think we've kind of reached the end of our session. I just want to summarize a bit on what we kind of explored on the current challenges, from kind of navigating complex policies to bridging knowledge gaps, and then we moved over the solutions and innovations, and from strategic financing models and smart digital transformations. Crucially, we've also peered into the future pathways, recognizing the need for integrated governance scale financing and cutting-edge technology. Well, I think it was truly insightful, and for that, I really want to thank Frank, Antje, Rohit, and Roman, and with a round of applause. It was really insightful, and with that, I will pass on to Nico for the closing remarks of the conference.
Thank you, Brian, thank you, everyone. I will be there because we are in the midst of time. Most of us will